Hey, um, I just got I just recorded 40 minutes worth of video and found out my mic was turned off, so I need to redo the video. Today I'll be making a video about CLG versus Team Liquid, and it will actually be their upcoming match that I will be talking about today for the quarterfinals. Now, the video I have playing in the background will be the last time CLG and Team Liquid met, and or I'll touch on some factors like throughout the video or throughout the video on the side, but I'm not going to dive too much into it. I just want to have it as a reference point throughout my video today. Now, that being said, I want to talk about what should CLG be looking to ban in this best of 5 series. Now, I put a lot of weight on the first game of the series, just in the fact that best of 5 series in my mind are a huge momentum, are a huge game about momentum, and whoever grabs the momentum first can usually run with it throughout the entire series, especially if or especially in this situation. Now, I feel like you must ban out Sejuani and Rek'Sai in this. There's no reason to give I Will Dominate two of his strongest picks in the meta right now. And the reason why I say it's two of the strongest picks, I Will Dominate, first of all, is one of the best junglers in NA. Without a doubt, no arguing. He's performed extremely well. He's shown that he has good jungle pathing along with the ability to show up to team fights or show up into the lanes when it needs to be. And he has very good optimization for choosing when and what lane he's going to gank. And he only ever, like, for example, when he plays Rek'Sai, he only ever ganks pre 6 if he knows 100% for a fact that Team Liquid's going to, pull a lead off of this, or they're going to get something that's going to lead into something else. He's not very, or he doesn't make a lot of small mistakes, and he doesn't like to waste time. That being said, Rek'Sai ban is a must. He's shown that he can pull out very good Baron steals, Drake steals, and the only other jungler in NA to actually do this, which is power farm until 6, set up a network of tunnels around his jungle, and then be able to counter gank any lane at will due to his good jungle setup or tunnel setup, and continue farming while still having this constant threat of Rek'Sai being the jungler she is. She can gank very well with her tunnels from very odd places and force the enemy team into constantly playing passive or playing safe unless they have good vision control. Now, if CLG don't ban out Rek'Sai, then that means they really need to keep tabs on I Will Dominate. They need to constantly be putting deep wards into the enemy jungle to make sure they keep tabs on him. Because if I Will Dominate gets to go around, do what he wants, and counter game when he wants, CLG is going to be for a rude awakening because he will always be there when they least expect it. On top of the Rek'Sai ban, I feel like CLG needs to ban out Sejuani. The Sejuani ban is just because, even though she got nerfed in the last patch, Glacial Prison, along with Sejuani with the Cinderhulk right now, she puts out a lot of damage. She has good clear in the early, which was, compared to before, it was terrible. And she has, with the Glacial Prison, there's so much CC and so much turnaround potential. One wrong position in the mid and late game, and an entire team fight is lost just because you know, Sejuani ult landed on 3 people and they all died instantly. You can be like, oh, well, how do you know I Will Dominate will do? Well, he has, and he's done it consistently. He has constantly turned up or showed up and performed well on this pick. He's been able to get the clutch Glacial Prisons. He's been able to turn around these team fights, and you can't afford to leave something like that up to chance, especially when you know a player is capable of it. Now, I didn't want to choose a third ban, like a must ban, but I'm going to have to. In the fact that I feel like Phoenix has been performing really well, and his Zed is one of the betters in NA, in my opinion. And the fact that he's able to draw a lot of pressure to mid lane, get out scot free, and still present this threat throughout the entire game of I'm playing an assassin champion. I will kill you. Whereas you have players like Link who play assassin champions, and from what I see, they don't seem to be so comfortable on it. They don't draw those early leads, they don't put out the pressure, and they can't perform their job in the mid and late game. Now, this isn't to detract from Link at all. I feel like he's a great player. I just feel like the playstyle he's been playing or the champion picks he's been put on, he doesn't seem the most comfortable on. And I want to touch on that as well later on in this video. Now, the reason why, along with you don't want to have Phoenix on Zed, just because, it's a comfort pick and he's shown that he puts out a lot of pressure, is this is a huge threat to Doublelift. Doublelift, I don't want to get on this hype train, Doublelift is the carry of CLG, that he's some crazy, god tier 80 carry. He's really good. He is one of CLG's star players. And this is what CLG needs to be focusing on. They have 3-star players. They have Afromu, they have Doublelift, and they have Zion Spartan. This is the core strengths in that team. They need to be playing around those strengths on the team to pull out these victories. If you look back at old CLG and how they got a lot of their wins, it was through Protect Doublelift. The reason why? Doublelift was a huge star. He was a playmaker. He was a powerhouse of CLG. He was what won them games. So what did they do? They crafted strategy around it to bring out the wins. Now, what I feel like CLG recently has done is they have a lot of good players who have the ability to play mechanically well, and they have these 3-star players. But they're not using Link and Xmithy to their full potential, and the fact that, yeah, okay, you have them on carry champions, but I don't feel like it optimally fills the positions that needed to be filled on that team to make them win these games. Not going too much into that, and to detract back to my point about Zed needing to be banned, it's a really important problem because Doublelift is the AD carry player for the team. And he needs to be able to constantly put out damage and position well against whatever, is coming at him. And if he's having to worry about an assassination attempt from, maybe a flank, it's like, whoa, shit, I don't know where Zed is. He could be coming from behind me, he can be coming around from the side, and he's going to blow me up if I'm not careful. If he's doing all this, he's not putting out damage on, whatever's in front of him, the front line. Or if he is, there's the threat. Zed could easily come from a flank. He could come from behind. And if Doublelift goes down, that's a lot of damage just lost from CLG. And you can't afford to let that happen. So this would be a huge cripple to CLG, and I don't feel like that's something they should take lightly. Now, if I move into in-game strategy and talking about what should we expect to see from CLG if they want to win this set, there's one simple way to describe it. They should be looking for the 2v2 matchup. They need the 2v2 matchup. If they do not get this 2v2 matchup, it's something that could easily win them the entire set. And they'll be going through a lot more trouble, in my mind, trying to win it than if they just try to get this 2v2. The reason why I say they should be shooting for this 2v2 and, getting that early scout, getting the ward control early, so they can see where the lanes are going and make sure they get this 2v2 matchup, is because, as we all know, Keith was subbed out for quite a few games, and due to Piglet's lack of performance. Now, this is an issue. Piglet has had very little time on the stage. Yes, he's a former world champion. Yes, he does have prior experience, but with this team in this environment, on this type of stage, in this type of setup, he seems to be very uncomfortable. And the fact that he hasn't had as much time as somebody like Doublelift and Afromu to synergize with his support X Special is a really concerning thing. You also have to factor on the fact that there's a language barrier. This could be, or this is a huge detriment to Team Liquid's lineup. And playing on that to your strength could be the entire deciding factor of the best of 5. Getting the 2v2, I see no reason why Doublelift and Afromoo should lose that 2v2 matchup. And if they win convincingly, assuming CLG wins the first game convincingly, I feel like momentum is a huge factor in best of fives, and it's something that takes control of a lot of the lower bracket teams. Not to say that CLG or Team Liquid are lower bracket teams, but for teams with less experience in the best of five format, I'll call a lower bracket team because they haven't had as much experience as, teams that compete internationally or things like this. Um, or a lower experienced team, I guess would be the better way to say it. Now, that being said, best of five format. If Piglet has not even had the ability to work on his best of ones with X Special, there's no clue on how he's going to perform in a best of five. And if CLG take the first game convincingly, who's to say Piglet won't go on massive tilt and end up losing the entire series just because of the first game? This could also be a huge deciding factor for Team Liquid as well, though. And if something goes wrong for CLG in the early game, which I feel is one of their strengths, Team Liquid could run all the way with it. Maybe Piglet turns up huge, and due to, whatever small advantages they got earlier, maybe Piglet gets a solo kill on Doublelift 1v1. Maybe this is enough to push them over the top. Maybe it's enough for them to win the entire match. It's very unlikely, but I feel like it could happen. And that's something that you don't want to or you don't want to risk if you're CLG. So you need to ensure that 1v1, or you need to ensure that 2v2 matchup. There's no reason Afromoo and Doublelift should lose that against a less experienced, less synergized lane in Piglet and X Special. Now, that being said, if you talk about early game, Doublelift and Afromoo, along with Xmithy, seem to have are be the general people who walk out and get those deep wards. A lot of times Lynx and Zion Spartan are staying back and defending certain parts of the jungle or just getting extra information. But they need to put out these early net of wards and to get that 2v2 matchup. Once they get this 2v2 matchup, this will allow for the lanes to play out the way they need to in CLG's favor. They have really strong top laner, or one of the star players is their top laner, Sion Spartan, and he should be able to win the 1v1 matchup against Quas. Even though Quas is a very strong top laner, one of the best, or arguably, yeah, arguably one of the best top laners in North America, puts out some of the strongest numbers, kill participation, gold per minute, and nobody ever really talks about him. But he's kind of this, solid top laner that always performs well, even when Team Liquid loses. He doesn't lose by that much, or he's still having like quite a strong impact in most of their games. But you want to try to secure these favorable matchups for your star players or for the powerhouses on your team, just so you can try to get these extra advantages in the early game to try to snowball that through the mid into the late. Now, mid game is a huge problem because even though CLG tends to get these early leads and it develops into something bigger, a lot of the times they either snowball off of it or they make a huge throw in the mid game. And this is usually due to the fact that I'm not sure what's going on. Maybe they need to talk to a sports psychologist. Uh, but a lot of times, people like Sion, people like Afromoo, even Doublelift, the players that are pressured into being the playmakers or they are the star players for that team, they're jumping the trigger or jumping the gun and pulling the trigger and making these really, really questionable plays that end up, let's say Afromoo just flashed mid through ulti with Zion Rumble ult, and all of a sudden CLG loses the fight, which happens in this game, and Team Liquid get Baron, and then they get a tier 2. And it's like, wow, CLG, you were kind of like in a position to win, and you kind of threw it away with, not waiting for the optimal time. And for example, in this game, CLG is running what it looks like to be a strong siege composition with good poke and objective control. So, in the form of objective control is if CLG sets up vision prior, it's really hard for Team Liquid to come and check. They're going to run into Nid Spears. They're going to run into Ezreal Q. If they come through any choke point, Rumble can lay down ulti in the middle of the choke point, and either Team Liquid fights on that and dies, or CLG gets a free Drake, or they get a Baron. And CLG tries to play around this a few times, but there's a lot of times throughout this game where CLG actually force these fights, and there's no reason to force them. They just get trigger happy, jump the gun, and then they throw an entire team fight and Baron. And this is a huge problem that needs to be fixed, and there needs to be more clear communication on what their win conditions are for their team compositions. Otherwise, things like this will keep happening, especially in the mid game. People get anxious, people just want to, secure that victory, make that play. And when you're one of the star players on the team, this is something that you have to try to try to deal with on the back of your mind, especially when you don't have it weighs on the other player's mind when you don't have such a or when you're mid or your jungler, and I'm going to target Xmithy and Link here, aren't performing as well. And the reason, first of all, I feel like they're not performing well, they're great players. Don't get me wrong. I am not targeting them and saying they're bad. What I'm saying is I don't think they're playing to their play style. I feel like they're trying, and if they are playing to their play style, they need to be adjusting it to the team's strengths. Because they don't seem comfortable in this type of situation, not just in the video, in general. In the CLG composition, they never seem comfortable. Link is always uncertain in his lane. He gets pushed in. Maybe he gets solo killed. Xmithy is building weird. He doesn't have optimal build paths. He's never in the right place. He doesn't know, like, he tries to put down all this pressure but never gets anything out of it. Then he gets counter jungled. Maybe he gets counter ganked, and it just doesn't work out. And I don't know what's going on because I'm not within the team environment, but it seems like there's maybe either communication errors or it's just that the team members don't mesh well with the champions they're using. Now, my fix for this, I'll go over right after I talk about the threat of what happens if CLG goes into the late game. But it mainly stems off the fact that I feel like if CLG just switched out the champion pool for Xmithy and Link, it could easily fix all their problems. Now, late game, this is really scary for CLG. If it goes into the late game, disregarding any advantage CLG had, it doesn't matter anymore. Any tilt Team Liquid was on, doesn't matter anymore. As soon as teams realize, or the Team Liquid would realize, let's say CLG was ahead, as soon as Team Liquid realizes that, hey, we were at a disadvantage, but look, we're all 6 items now. We're on an even playing field. This could be a huge, huge problem for CLG, because once tilt factor gets removed and confidence starts coming back, this opens up the ability for plays to happen. And one wrong step from, Link mispositioning, Dlift mispositioning, maybe they overcommit for a kill, or after move flashes in and ultis, this could mean the end for CLG. And the reason that being is because Team Liquid can thrive in chaos. Quas has an extremely level head. He's very, very rarely mispositions. I've never really, in all my games that I've seen Quas play, he's usually really good about where he stands in lane, always has his wards out, and even in team fights, he's getting, on this game and on Morgana, he's making sure he gets his ulti on the targets on the most optimal targets for that situation. He puts his spell shield on right at the right time, or he makes sure that they can check the right positions. Even when they're pressured really hard, Quas has shown that he can make these smart decisions. And if it goes into the late game, if anything, chaotic happens, this is a huge advantage for Team Liquid because CLG seems to like cripple as soon as something chaotic happens or something is indecisive, and then Team Liquid would just thrive. I will dominate, maybe flashes in, knocks everybody up with the Rek'Sai knock up, anything, or he got. There's some games where I will dominate, just all of a sudden he was getting chased, turns around, 3-man Sejuani ult, and then that's game. And you can't let Team Liquid get into this late game phase. They have a lot of experienced players who have an idea of what to do into the late game, and even if they may not mesh as well as a team, they have the individual performance to be able to pull back victories if it goes late enough. Some extra things I want to note and touch on now is champion picks and what I think CLG should be readjusting to better suit their team playstyle and the core strengths of CLG. I'm not too impressed with how Xmithie's been playing on carry focused junglers. He's been picking Vi, he's been picking Rek'Sai, he's been picking Nidalee. And yes, these were all strong, and even now they're kind of strong, but he doesn't perform well. And even if he does perform well, I've seen him go, lock it second item on Vi, or I've seen him go lock it second item on Rek'Sai. And a lot of these situations, it's not optimal. His item pathing is very poor, or he chooses to path at the wrong times for certain objectives and decisions according to where the game is. So I'm not impressed with Xmithie's decisions on those particular champions. Now, build paths is something you can easily work on. Champions, that's a different story. Now, it always seems like he's uncomfortable on these carry champions, and I don't know if it's because he's pressured into trying to feel like he needs to make these plays to, pull these leads, when he could just be pulling back to CLG's strengths and supporting the team. And when I say supporting the team, I mean, I want to see Xmithie on Nunu. I want to see Xmithie on Sion jungle. I want to see him on Gragas. These type of champions that can be a solid wall frontline, create disruption, and have strong objective control, and the fact that you can create a fight or you can start something while still being able to soak up free hits. If we just talk about Nunu, for example, CLG usually has really strong early Drake control. Nunu would just spike that. He would also be able to keep tabs on I will dominate throughout wherever he is in the enemy jungler, just because he was able to rush an early Sightstone. Along with being able to get the early dragons, this can help secure CLG if they manage to make any mistakes around the mid game and not fall too far behind just because they were able to get those early dragons. You take a champion like Gragas, for example, and let's say Xmithie's playing Gragas jungle. And the reason why I mention all these champions is because Cinderhawk changes made them really strong. But going back to Gragas would be really good for all this objective control, just in the fact that whenever you're coming into Baron or Drakes, there's all these choke points. And for example, in this game, Sion Spartan plays Rumble, and you use these choke points to your advantages. Gragas can do that really well. He can zone out with his Q. It's an AoE slow. It's supposed to slow attack speed as well. He has a W that allows him to take percent health, or it increases his percent of damage reduction. He has an E for disrupt and a gap closer. If he hits an AD carry with his W proc, that's 1/4 of their health gone. He has a really strong displacement in his ult. So if anyone's ever coming through the choke points, let's say he's on Gragas, he can literally just throw his ulti and just pick somebody out or split somebody up. And let's say you just knock 2 of Team Liquid's members into 5 people and you knock 3 of them away. You can blow those 2 members up, instant 5v3. And this would be huge. You just take the free objective, or you turn on them and win a fight, take a tower. Same goes for Sion. He's this really strong front line. He has the ability to, let's say you're dancing around Drake, dancing around Baron. With his ulti, he can maybe catch something from the side. If he's off on the back, he can catch something from the side. Along with being a flex pick, Sion Spartan has showed that he's a really strong Sion player. If you take Sion early and Xmithie had been practicing Sion jungle, this would be a really good mind game for CLG to play on, and the fact that maybe Quas takes something like Swain, and then Sion can immediately counterpick it, and they can just put the Sion into the jungle while still having this, really good front line with CC to be able to peel back and control these situations to let Doublelift deal damage with Zion Spartan, or be able to just hold on to these side objectives with the threat of the champion itself while Zion's split pushing somewhere. Same goes for Link. I don't feel like he's comfortable at all on these assassin champions. They keep putting him on him. You see him on LeBlanc, you see him on Zed, you see him on, just all these play Ari. You see him on all these playmaking champions, and he is yet to perform really well. I don't know if it's because, they want him for like this extra wave clear, but there are other champions that still perform this task. And even if you don't get ahead in the early game, you're still useful in the mid and late. Take Lulu, for example. You have a lot of utility and good damage and the ability to buff up Zion Spartan or Doublelift, two of your main star players or two of your carries. You can't get pushed in that well, or you can't get pushed in that hard. You don't get pressured that hard. You're kind of a lane bully in yourself while still playing safe. Orianna, for example, Link has showed that he can put up a pretty good Orianna. There's been some flukes with his command shockwaves, but you can't base it all around that. You got to put. I feel like Link would be a lot stronger if you put him on some control mages. Orianna would be, I mentioned, as another example. Lissandra, he kind of flukes sometimes, but I feel like that's because he was playing more offensively instead of defensively, and that's like another story in itself, along with how you can play champions in different styles. Like Mad Life can play offensive thresh, Lost Boy plays defensive thresh. This I think I'm remembering this from a Thorin video as well. Anyways, with these control mages or with these utility mages, it would just allow Link to be able to hold on to. He's a good mechanical player. He knows how to utilize power spikes. He knows how to play well. He knows how to get the job done or the task he needs to achieve. But when you put him on all these assassins, it's like if he doesn't get ahead early, he can't accomplish his task of killing out a carry into the mid and late game. And he's proved that. So what they need to do is start focusing on the strengths of CLG, and by putting Link on more utility base, it would allow for them to hold on to victories and hold on to their carries and better control all these choke points around objectives. Along with Xsmithy straying away, I would like to see him stray away from these really, carry-based junglers that don't really suit him that well from my past experiences watching him play. And if maybe they put him on some of these other junglers, these tank disruption, CLG could start pulling out a lot more victories because it would help them transition through the mid and late game by securing these early leads and being able to protect the core members of the team or play on the power spikes of the team in general. So best of luck to both teams. Can't wait to see the outcome. Thanks for watching my video. Leave a like. I'll link Thorin's video about best players or how teams have, their best 1 through 5 players. I thought it was a really good listen. Thanks for watching.